In May of 1765, a young Virginia lawyer named Patrick Henry rose in the House of Burgesses. He warned his fellow colonists about the dangers of unchecked British power. Caesar had his Brutus, Charles I his Cromwell, and George III may profit by their example. The chamber erupted in shock. Cries of treason rang out. Yet Henry's words captured a growing sentiment in America that liberty itself was under threat from the very empire that had long celebrated. So welcome back to APUSH for All. Today we're diving into the turbulent decade after the French and Indian War, the moment when Britain stood as a global superpower but found its colonies increasingly restless. We'll cover everything from George III's imperial vision and the Proclamation of 1763 to the Stamp Act crisis, yikes, the rise of the Sons of Liberty, the Boston Massacre, and the Tea Party. Along the way, we'll explore how debates over sovereignty and representation laid the foundation for revolution. And we'll ask some very tough questions. Were the Sons of Liberty freedom fighters? Or were they terrorists? How did propaganda shape the colonial response? And why did Boston, in particular, become the epicenter of resistance? Plus, we'll think about how issues like taxation, sovereignty, and protest resonate in modern America. So, let's jump in.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
What?
We are back. I love that music.
That's great music.
What's going on, Garrison?
Nothing much. We just made a video, a reel, addressing the fact that Mr. Hill is not with us for the full recording today.
Mr. Hill is no longer with us.
No, we don't mean
He's
it
still
that
alive.
way. We explained it, and everybody just needs to settle down, because contrary to what's being said out there in the hallways, he has not resigned. He has not left this school. He simply
Or the Earth.
He simply took a day,
He took a day off, as he should.
as we all should every once in a while.
Yeah, he's on a little weekend getaway, and we're happy for him. But you just heard his part. He just recorded yesterday without us, and we're going to do our best to carry on without him. But it's tough.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy.
How was your week?
You know, I had a pretty solid week.
You got a big weekend coming up.
Big weekend. Shout out to the wedding.
Yeah, you're
Not my wedding.
And what is your big role?
I am the Master of Ceremonies,
Whoo-wee.
otherwise known as the MC.
Only because the people who are getting married, they know how famous you are from the podcast.
Right. They wanted to bring some gravitas to the whole procedure.
Yeah.
Procedure? No,
Well,
reception.
are you nervous?
No, I'm not nervous. I think it's going to be great. Obviously, people are going to want to hear some jokes from me.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to want me to bring my charisma to the dance floor.
Your
all the-
Riz?
The Riz.
Yeah.
Graham, my son, is going to. He listens. By the way, he listens to our podcast at night when he goes to sleep.
It is. I always tell people that. It's very good if you can't sleep
It's soothing.
or boring.
Either way. But
Shout out to Graham.
So he's going to be listening to this at some point.
Hi, Graham.
And although he kind of just jumps around. He's
Yeah,
all over
that's
the
okay.
place. But he is going to be singing "Ain't That a Kick in the Head"
Oh, wonderful.
during the reception.
Is that Dean Martin?
Dean Martin?
Yeah, good.
He likes to sing.
Wow.
So
Get a video of that so I can see.
I will. We're going to belt that out.
All right.
So yeah,
Well-
did we play our? It's like, do we play our intro music, or are we just going to play that before when we go back into edit? We'll
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about that.
Well, I know, but we have them on the buttons.
You don't have
now.
to worry about that. But
Okay.
yeah, my week was great. So thanks for asking.
I was about to ask. I said
Yeah.
before. I was going to say before we press that button, I want to make sure I get to ask about your weekend.
Yep, my week was good. It went very fast. I was told today, and I am remembering this, I'm supposed to give Liv and Darcy a shout out for the challah that they gave to me today. Liv made some delicious challah.
Oh.
And so
I
I
thought
told
you
them
meant like a challah.
No, I should have. Yeah, it's challah.
But I do enjoy challah.
Yeah, it
as
was
well.
so good. So shout out to them.
I didn't get any, but
Yep. Well, maybe one day.
I talked to some students who would like to sponsor an episode. And I
Really?
said, well, we can't just have individual students sponsoring an episode.
No.
But if others want to sponsor us at some point, feel free.
Yeah, we're wide open on the sponsorships now.
So that should be something I'm sure we'll hear of soon.
All right, well, let's get into it.
We should get into this? All right, so as Mr. Hill, in his introduction, laid the groundwork for us here, we are going to jump right into 1763, big year.
Huge.
Britain has emerged victorious from the French and Indian War. Winston Churchill, Winston Churchill was a historian.
Yes.
First. Winston Churchill later called the first true world war because it was fought all over the world. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense. And after this war, Britain's victory allows them to gain control of vast new territories stretching from Canada to the Ohio Valley. But victory came at a cost because staggering war debt, it was an expensive war, and the need to manage restless native peoples in the interior of North America proved to be some big challenges.
And we have a new king of Great Britain at this point, George III. He had come to the throne in 1760, and he was of the mindset that the crown needed to assert greater control over its empire. And I think a lot of that had to do with his own, desire to be considered a strong monarch. And we know he had some challenges. George III had some mental health challenges. But he and his ministers wanted the colonists to pay a fair share of the imperial expenses, and the French and Indian War was a very large expense. And they also justified this, that it was for the protection of the colonists, that they were the ones living in this territory where the conflict was happening, so they should pay for their own defense. But these very policies that were designed to stabilize the empire actually only ended up deepening the tensions.
And if we're playing devil's advocate, it does sort of logically make sense that a war fought on the colonists' behalf to secure the frontier, maybe they should chip in a little bit.
It does. I mean, when you think about the American Revolution and the reason why it's fought, it really is not that far-fetched that an empire would want their colonies who are benefiting from being part of that empire to chip in a little bit to it. However, I think the American Revolution it was preordained.
Oh, wow.
And
didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, I mean,
predestination.
Look what came out of it.
True. Here we are. It wasn't just that they wanted the colonists to chip in. There's another big moment in 1763 that is really going to serve as a catalyst for the events to come, and that's the Proclamation line of 1763. They weren't very creative with their names, but that's okay. It tells us exactly what it did. It created a line, sort of an invisible line, that forbade settlement west of the Appalachian Mountains. Its goal was to reduce conflict with the many different native peoples after Pontiac's rebellion, which we briefly mentioned last episode. The settlers, though, especially those in Pennsylvania and these landowners in Virginia especially, saw it as an attack on their right to expand westward. And groups like the Paxton Boys, Mr. Hill will be sad that he didn't get to talk about the Paxton Boys.
Yeah, he mentioned them last week.
But the Paxton Boys are these frontier vigilantes who really just took the law in their own hands to push back against these native peoples. They turned their anger violently against these tribes that were still on that frontier, and it underscored how fragile British authority really was in the back country.
Is it Appalachian or Appalachian? I say Appalachian.
This one can go either way. It really depends.
We're always really struggling with the pronunciation.
I think both people definitely both say it both ways.
Okay.
So I think it's okay to say it either
Appalachian.
way. Appalachian.
All right, so enter George Grenville. This is Britain's prime minister. So this would be kind of similar to the head of the Senate or the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Parliament is the lawmaking branch of the British government. And they're facing this massive war debt. Grenville believes that colonists should really help foot this bill, as we've explained. So the first the first tax in all of this is going to be the Sugar Act of 1764, chronology.
Matters.
1764, and this is going to actually lower the duties on molasses, not increase them, but what it's going to do is actually enforce the duty on molasses, where beforehand salutary neglect had been practiced, and so the British Empire was kind of turning a blind eye, but now they're going to really start cracking down on the smuggling of molasses and actually enforcing this. So it wasn't the tax itself, but it was the enforcement that really starts to rattle merchants.
And that's what I think a lot of times people get wrong. They think, oh, it's a tax. But no, it was just to tell the smugglers, hey, you guys got to chill with the smuggling, because Americans had gotten really good at smuggling.
Yes.
But the real spark, though, comes a little bit after this in 1765 with the Stamp Act. For the first time, Parliament has imposed a direct tax specifically on the colonies, requiring stamps on newspapers, legal documents, even playing cards. And it hit nearly every colonist. And this is the key. I mean, yes, lawyers and merchants are going to be hit the hardest, but it's going to be everyday farmers, tavern goers, workers, dock workers. Everyone is impacted by this, and it really starts to unify the colonists around one cause to be pretty angry about.
Yeah, and Patrick Henry of Virginia is going to be the guy who really puts words into how people are feeling about this Stamp Act, and he is going to issue the fiery Virginia Resolves, that argued that only colonial assemblies could tax their people, not the crown and not Parliament. So meanwhile, 9 colonies are going to gather at the Stamp Act Congress in New York, and they're going to declare no taxation without representation.
What a famous line.
Yes, very famous. And meanwhile, Ben Franklin is going to testify before Parliament. He's going to go across the pond, and he's going to warn that colonists distinguished between duties to regulate trade and taxes to raise revenue, that there needs to be a difference between these two things, accepting the former but resisting the latter. And on the streets, resistance is really going to take a much more radical turn. The Sons of Liberty, a very famous resistance group, they're a network of artisans, merchants, young men really organized to boycott and sometimes intimidate people like tax collectors. I think it's a good question for us to think about. Should we think of them as patriots or maybe domestic terrorists in a way? It really depends who you asked at the time and who you would ask today maybe. But they're going to use tactics like tarring and feathering royal officials in the colonies. And I mean, just
That's pretty extreme.
Yeah, a quick understanding of tarring and feathering. Basically, you would strip someone of their clothes. You would then pour extremely hot tar over them.
So that it would melt into their skin.
And then you would throw a bunch of feathers onto them. And when the tar dried pretty quickly, the feathers would stick to them. And not only was this extraordinarily painful, they would then be paraded through the streets. And so it would be highly embarrassing.
Yeah, and I think there's a misconception about who the Sons of Liberty actually were. Their name implies they were a group of individuals who were dedicated to liberty, which sounds really great. But in fact, I mean, they had some pretty influential backers.
Oh, yeah. Sam Adams, and John Hancock.
I mean, we got some of the richest, wealthiest individuals in New England helped organize these guys, right? And they weren't just protesting peacefully. I mean, they were using, as we just explained, some pretty intense tactics.
Yeah.
If I told you today that a group of individuals had grabbed a government official and tarred and feathered them,
paraded them through the streets,
we'd probably all be like, that's not cool.
Yeah. Where's the rule of law?
Yeah. So the thing I always like to tell my students, and I stole this from an article I read a long time ago, but it's every villain is someone else's hero.
Yes.
And every hero is someone else's villain. So it's something to think about. That was pretty deep.
Deep.
So 1766, economic pressure, political outcry, all of this is going to force Parliament to repeal the Stamp Act. But it simultaneously passed something called the Declaratory Act, asserting full authority over the colonies. This really sets the stage for further clashes.
So even though they repeal the tax, at the same time they're saying, hey, should we pass anything else? All of this has our stamp of approval and
unintended.
It's absolute authority over you.
All right, so Charles Townsend or
Yes.
Townshend.
No,
I
it's
think
Townsend.
it's Townsend. Okay.
Townsend. That was something we agree on.
Yeah, that's good. So this guy is Britain's new chancellor, and he thought he'd found this clever little fix to all the problems in the colonies: indirect duties on imports like glass, paint, paper, and tea. It's passed in 1767. It's called the Townshend Acts, and it's aimed to raise revenue without the sting of these pesky direct taxes.
And colonists are not fooled by this. They are going to respond with renewed boycotts. And this time, women are going to play a central role in the boycotting because when you boycott British goods, that means everything you were getting from them now has to be homespun, is what they would call. So it has to be made at home. And typically, women were the ones, if it was cloth, clothing, they'd be making it themselves. And they would even form groups, sewing circles, things like this. And so the Daughters of Liberty is going to be a new group, kind of modeled after the Sons of Liberty. And like I said, the homespun cloth is going to make a difference. And they also are going to start refusing to drink British tea, making resistance a daily act of defiance.
So the Sons of Liberty nearly kill people, and the Daughters of Liberty just say, hey, you know what? We're not going to drink this tea. And I would argue that the boycotts were probably more effective overall.
Money talks.
Yep, there you go. Okay, so Boston quickly becomes the heart of the protest movement. We've got New England merchants who are, in particular, they have a lot at stake here, and they're going to organize non-importation agreements. But then you've got those who are connected to this economy, so dock workers, artisans, sailors, all are going to clash with these British soldiers. And this is the key. Britain's going to send soldiers to make sure that all of this is enforced. And once these soldiers arrive, that's when the city simmered with tension.
Yes. So on March 5th of 1770, it's all going to boil over, this tension. And you're going to have a confrontation between British soldiers and townspeople in Boston that left 5 colonists dead. And of course, this would be the Boston Massacre. And patriots are really going to seize this moment. Paul Revere, he was a man of many hats. He was a silversmith. He, was a very influential figure within Boston. He also engraved pieces of art.
Yeah, he worked with wood and tin engravings, and that's how you would make those pamphlets.
Right. And so he is going to have a very famous portrayal of the Boston Massacre, and he portrays it as just that, a massacre. And you see British troops firing into what seems like a defenseless crowd. You have one of my favorite parts of that piece, and if you just Google Paul Revere Boston Massacre, there's a dog.
Yeah, the poor dog.
The dog is standing on the side of the colonists facing
of course. Yeah.
the British,
Yeah.
and dogs were seen as signs of loyalty, that representative loyalty. And so if the dog's on your side, then you're on the right side. Right. So that's a really interesting piece to look at for like an artist's purpose.
It's got to be one of the most famous and important pieces of American propaganda that exists.
Oh, because it was kind of a misrepresentation of what actually happened at the Boston Massacre. I mean,
for sure.
The British troops were not firing on a defenseless crowd. If anything, it was probably more of the crowd was doing the heckling, and chaos ensues.
Probably it was the crowd. So maybe the best way to think about it is this: you've got teenagers who are British soldiers that have been sent, 18, 19, 20-year-olds that have been sent to the colonies across the ocean. And a night sentry, just one dude, was standing out there, and he was surrounded by a group of at least 100, 150, maybe even 200 Sons of Liberty. Mm-hmm. And if I was that British soldier, I probably also would be scared.
Yeah.
He calls out for help, and that's when the guard comes out. And then from there, it gets a little shaky on exactly what happened. But we know that it's unlikely that the British actually intentionally fired on the crowd until it seemed like maybe they were being attacked.
And who comes to the defense? The legal defense of the British soldiers is going to be none other than our second president of the United States, Mr. John Adams.
Yeah, and this is a really cool moment. We mentioned this, as our students will tell you, because we just watched some scenes from the first episode of the HBO hit show John Adams, and it does a really great job of portraying this. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it.
It's a great watch.
Good show.
And it just goes through the entirety of John Adams' life. But the Boston Massacre is really important because pamphlets are going to declare that, there's this innocent blood crying to God from the streets of Boston. This propaganda, it's going to turn tragedy into a rallying cry, and yet Parliament, they're gonna start repealing some of these Townsend duties soon after because of this, except for the tax on tea. Even though this is a very small duty on tea, it's going to be a symbol that is too big to ignore.
By the early 1770s, resistance was as much intellectual as it was practical. So Sam Adams, the cousin of John Adams, he is a wealthy and highly influential figure in Boston. He's going to help organize what were called committees of correspondence, which has actually had a long tradition. It's not like the colonists were the ones who came up with this, but the idea was that if you could quickly communicate across the colonies and spread news and information of British action, you could start to bring people together. And we've referenced this before with the Enlightenment, that print culture and different forms of Enlightenment thinking are going to merge together to help create this movement.
Yeah. And sometimes that news that's being spread, kind of similar to the Boston Massacre, it's not always completely representative of actually what's happening. And the purpose of it is to get people riled up, to support this resistance. And colonists are really, they are going to wrestle with the deeper philosophy of revolt. And Britain insisted on this idea of virtual representation, that members of parliament represented all subjects, even those who hadn't elected them, because the people living in the colonies, they weren't voting in parliamentary elections back in Britain. But this virtual representation was a way for Britain to justify what was being passed through Parliament. And colonists rejected this, and they said that representation required consent and direct election. And we're seeing a lot of Enlightenment era thought here about self-government and consent of the governed. And hence we have this enduring slogan of the colonist: no taxation without representation.
Yeah, and these debates, they go beyond taxes. They really raise fundamental questions about sovereignty. And I actually think this is the strongest case for revolution. So far, you might be listening and think, do these two hate America?
No, I told you it was preordained.
Yeah, you did say that. And I think that really what we're trying to say is the way the revolution comes about is not quite as cut and dry and straightforward as maybe a lot of Americans believe. It was complicated. It was nuanced. But at the same time,
it's so nuanced.
It's very nuanced. But at the same time, it wasn't as if there weren't some real principled arguments that the colonists were trying to pull together. And this idea of representation, of the consent of the governed, the power of the people, this is a real argument for questioning authority. And so really what they're saying is, can Parliament legislate for the colonies at all? I mean, if the colonies don't have any voice, are they really belonging to the government? I mean, do they really have a power? Or really were the colonies just simply supposed to do whatever the king said? Were they just tied to the king because they were citizens of the crown? I mean, these are questions that are worth asking.
Yeah, all very legitimate questions, and that's the most important part of revolution. It does justify the revolution. It's not necessarily the taxes. It is the larger idea of who's in charge and why are they in charge and is it right? And all these tensions that we see throughout the 1760s and then in 1770 with the Boston Massacre, they're going to also explode with the Tea Act of 1773. And this was designed to rescue a company at the time which had a monopoly, the East India Company. And the British government was allowing the company to sell tea directly to the colonies at a very reduced price. So actually, even with the tax, the tea was cheaper. But it's not necessarily about the price for the colonists. It's about the principle of it. And so many colonists saw this deal that they were cutting with the East India Company. Colonists saw it as a trick for them to accept Parliament's right to tax.
In Boston, of course, like we keep saying Boston, but this is Boston, but the harbor. I bet people in Boston hate it.
Yeah.
when we do that.
I'm sorry, Boston listeners.
And we do have a couple. I saw that on our analytics. We have some Boston listeners.
We love you, Boston.
Yeah. So in Boston, we've got these radicals who refused to let these tea ships unload. And on December 16th, they disguised themselves, these Boston radicals, Sons of Liberty, disguised themselves as Mohawk Indians. They're going to board ships and dump 342 chests of tea into the harbor. And of course, we're speaking of the Boston Tea Party. And really, it was protest, but also performative. It was meant to be dramatic and defiant all at the same time.
Britain is going to respond with fury on this one, and they are going to pass something that they call the Coercive Acts. They called it the Coercive Acts in order to coerce the colonies back into obedience, but the colonists start calling it the Intolerable Acts, that what the British are doing are completely unacceptable and intolerable. And a couple of things that these are going to do. It closes the Boston Harbor, which is a huge economic blow to Boston, Massachusetts, and New England's economy. They are going to curtail town meetings, which, as we know, is something super important in New England culture even today. They are going to also allow British officials accused of crimes in the colonies to be tried back in England, so giving them a more friendly trial back in England. And this doesn't just isolate Massachusetts. In fact, it really brings the other 12 colonies to the defense of Massachusetts. They're going to outrage all the other colonies, and this is going to start strengthening the cause for unity.
The debates of the 1760s and 1770s definitely resonate today. I mean, how often do you hear people throw back to the revolution when trying to make a modern-day political argument?
How often do you hear people complain about taxes?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
All the time. It's very American from the beginning.
So who gets to decide, though, how we're taxed? What's the line between protest and violence? I mean, that question right there has been with us since the very beginning.
Yeah, is violence ever justified?
Right, and is protest an act that is ultimately, is it philosophical? Is it meant to bring about change, or is it meant to undermine authority? How do you protest peacefully? First Amendment, all this stuff is so wrapped up in our very early beginnings. And so there's this question then, how do governments respond when their authority is challenged? This is a complicated set of questions that echo in debates today over civil disobedience, taxation, and federal power.
And it also makes us think about propaganda, going back to Paul Revere's very influential engraving of the Boston Massacre to today's viral memes, right? These tools, they change over time, but the power of images and narratives to shape public opinion really remains strong.
And I love that we had that quick little discussion about the Sons of Liberty. Are these guys heroes, or are they just a bunch of criminals out there on the streets looking to shake things up? I mean, I think it's not that there's a definitive right answer there. It's more that we're having a broader perspective on these events, and it allows us to ask, who was really behind the Sons of Liberty, and what was their ultimate goals, and how should we tell that story? And I think we can tell it a number of different ways, and it makes it a more interesting story overall, just in to say that these were the good guys and they were fighting for liberty. You could definitely make that case, but we can see from the British perspective that these were a bunch of criminals out to undermine the law.
Yeah, and I've read somewhere, and of course I don't have a source to cite, and that's bad, but I think I've read where about a third of the colonists were patriots. About a third of them were loyal. They were loyalists to the British Crown. And then about a third of them were either indecisive or just didn't really care so much, kind of apathetic, and just thought, well, I don't have a lot of power or wealth anyway, so it doesn't really matter who wins.
And it's only retrospectively that all this stuff seems so clear. In truth, history is really complicated, and that's why we like history.
Yes.
Because it's a cool story to tell.
We love history.
We love history. Okay, so what should listeners take from today. First, Britain's attempt to manage its empire after 1763 is really going to backfire. Colonies are going to collectively start to resist. Second, the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, they show how taxation will become this flashpoint for broader debates over sovereignty. No taxation without representation. Third, Boston's protest.
Wait. Say the line again.
No taxation without representation.
I just realized I hadn't used a sound effect yet, except at the beginning.
I thought maybe you'd choose like the applause one or something.
All right, say it again.
No taxation without representation.
Now, say Patrick Henry's famous line.
Give me liberty or give me death. You think they played that after he said that someone had an air horn in the crowd?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that the real Patrick Henry was more engaging than the one I saw, the impersonator I saw at Williamsburg this summer.
No, it wasn't good? You would think that's like a choice role.
I went to see the impersonator speak.
Yeah.
And it was so hot in July when I was in Williamsburg.
Ooh.
And it was at a theater that had air conditioning. And so I thought, okay, this will be perfect.
Yeah.
I can get a little reprieve from the heat. And I went in there and Patrick Henry just sat in a chair. It was just this one-man show. He sat in a chair and talked about his whole life
Yikes.
from beginning to end. I thought it was going to be this really engaging, dramatic, riveting speech against the British. And I fell asleep the entire time.
Oh, wow.
And only did I wake up when people started to applaud when it was over. So.
Yikes. I mean, you would think, I guess, though, on the other hand, what kind of caliber of actor are you going to find to play Patrick Henry in the middle of a heat wave?
True. I will say about the reenactments, it did make me realize a real dream of mine, and that is to be a historical reenactor at Williamsburg.
Wow. It's good to have dreams.
Because I did go to a witch trial at night at Williamsburg, and it started at 9 p.m., which was very late for me. But I thought, you know what? You're on vacation. Just do it.
Right.
And so I bought my ticket and I went, and I loved it. And the acting was so good. And I thought, wait, this could be me. I mean, teaching kind of is that for me.
Right. We put on a show every day.
We totally put on a show and stand-up comedy and, but
students' applause at the end.
But, I mean, I need to get into community theater or something.
I think our listeners are quickly learning that you have a pretty cool social life. I mean, every time you go on vacation, it is just full of reenactments and historical sites. It's really exciting stuff.
I am who I am.
Yeah.
Can't a woman be passionate about something?
I think that's definitely true. Yeah. Well said.
Get back to our takeaways.
Sorry. So third, Boston's protests from the Massacre to the Tea Party galvanized not just Massachusetts, but colonial unity up and down the seaboard. And finally, this philosophy of revolt that we just emphasized, this idea of no taxation without representation. Thank you. It's going to lay out an argument, a powerful argument for independence.
And so for the AP exam, for our students listening, remember how these events connect, right? Causes. War debt is going to lead to taxes, which are going to lead to protests. Continuity and change about the ideas of colonial identity and how it keeps evolving. In 1754, we have Benjamin Franklin calling for the colonies to unite in the Albany Plan of Union, that they must join or die. They choose not to, but then by 1773, following the Tea Act and the Boston Tea Party, you really have most of the colonies coming together in defense of themselves against the British. And also comparison, right? Colonial ideas of representation versus the British notions of virtual representation.
And don't forget these powerful figures involved. Patrick Henry, Ben Franklin, Sam Adams, the sons and daughters of liberty.
Abigail Adams,
Slay
Mercy
Abigail.
Otis Warren. Lots of women are also involved in this.
Yes, and they loved reenactments even back then, I bet.
I'm sure they did, just like me.
Then these just aren't names that you should memorize. They're characters in a really compelling story, and they're the voices of revolution. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Cool. So thanks for tuning in to APUSH for All. We will have Mr. Hill back with us, never fear. If you like the episode, Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple iTunes, YouTube. Leave us a review if you got a topic you want us to cover, or you want us to, just to answer any of your. We don't get a lot of questions.
We don't. We don't get a lot of DMs. It'd be fun if we got more. Oh, I don't get service in here. I was going to see if we had any. But...
Well, send us some questions. Maybe you'd like to know more about some of these reenactments that Miss Keltner's gone to.
Oh, please.
No, I think it's great.
I'm sure that you have gone to some ridiculous Civil War stuff.
I made my family take on our family vacation when I think I was 12. I got to pick, and I chose Gettysburg battlefield.
Heck yes.
So there
you
go.
and I are cut from the same cloth.
It's true. We're both very cool.
Not on today's episode, but sometime I'll tell you about how I didn't go to Vegas for senior spring break and tried to go to a Civil War battle reenactment in Sikeston, Missouri, and how that ended up for me.
That's what they call a little teaser.
Yeah, we'll leave that for next time.
But yeah, send us a message. Hang out with us on Instagram at APUSH for all.
Yeah. Until next time, guys, keep learning from yesterday to make sense of today.